And Gene, how about hearing from you next?
Well, Norman said a good deal of what I was going to say. When we set up this conference, we really wanted to move beyond the classic DB versus DC world, which is actually narrowly defined usually as traditional DBs, which in my view have never really worked for a majority of people any more than current DCs, I think, are working for the majority of people, but for different reasons. And we wanted to go to the specific, what Norman called the building blocks that we could work on and think about separately. And I think if you look across the panels, and I really encourage you to take Norman up on his invitation about putting together your own building blocks. But in fact, some we didn't even deal with. But you know, the question of improving annuitization. We've toyed with other ways to the risk of people withdrawing too early, which may be a little bit paternalistic, but you saw different features in some plans that try to deal with that, maybe by keeping employer money in solution. We talked about dividing up employer versus employer risk. We talked about retention risk, which I think was an issue in the old traditional DB plans. I mean, there are a lot of features in these different plans you heard today. I think you could actually think about building your own system. The one thing, and the one I think really obstacle that we face more than any other, is that if we are really going to put more money into retirement plans, particularly for low and moderate and middle, because middle income people generally aren't well covered either, more money for them up front, it is going to have this revenue cost. Several of the people from the Senate and the House from the Finance and Ways and Means and Aging and other committees are quite alert to this, and I think they raised it a couple times throughout the session. And we are going to have to bite that bullet. We didn't really deal a lot with that today. It does mean that we've either got to figure out ways to actually decide there's other things we're not going to do as much of. It may be within the private pension world. Maybe we do have to cap a little more the growth in what you can get at the top of the system. But it also is probably, even if you did that, I think you probably are going to have to think beyond just the private pension world and think about this is an area that we're willing to spend some more money, but that may mean we have to deal with other aspects of the budget as well. And we did not resolve that. I go back to something that Pamela said when we discussed our plan, but I think it applies in general, is when Great Britain did make its effort at private pension reform, it became an integral part of their Social Security reform. So they didn't just sort of take Social Security and decide very narrowly, how are we going to create a Social Security system that's now actuarially in balance? That's a pretty narrow target. It doesn't say much about how you're going to fix Social Security to help low-income people or how you're going to deal with various inequities or inefficiencies in that system. And it doesn't say much about increasing private saving because Social Security is mainly a pay-as-you-go system. And there is an advantage, even beyond a lot of issues we talked about today, in increasing over the long term, not necessarily during the coming out of recession, but over long term, increasing our saving in society, which is, if we're going to do it, is probably going to have some revenue cost up front with the long-term growth potentials that it creates down the road. And those issues remain to be dealt with, but I think they are going to be a crucial part of the solution. I encourage all of you today, as I say, as Norman said, take your building blocks, help build up systems of your own, find common elements with people and industries and advocacy organizations with whom you may not traditionally have worked, and realize that there is a lot of diversifiable risk here that we can I think, together reduce.
Gene, that was terrific. Thank you.